save many, many lives which from certain death. He was honoured in Australia with our Order of Australia medal, and he was also honoured by the Aboriginal community with an Aboriginal name, which is Jumba Jumba. The second story I want to tell is about a lady called Rose Gurapatam. She was awarded an Australian National Honour in 1985. In the 1950s, she contributed greatly to the success in a village project in Murthy, near the Madras Christian College. In that project, she started with a midday meal program and developed into a dispensary, and later that grew into a healthcare service and a rural community centre. She arrived in Darwin, again in our Northern Territory, in 1973, and for the next 25 years she managed the Darwin Aboriginal Resources Centre, which provided a refuge for Aboriginal women and raised funds to educate Aboriginal women. Auntie Rose, as she was known by the Aboriginal community, was very popular, and she became described in the Darwin press as the Northern Territory's doyen of charities. These are not isolated stories, and as Dr. Cherian can attest, there is a significant collaboration between India and Australia in the area of rural and remote medicine and its delivery. For example, in the context of recent times, Australian medical institutes have been working with the LV Prasad Eye Institute in the development of their vision centres. This is to provide primary eye care into areas that are rural and also urban, which have not been serviced with eye care facilities. This model of success here in India has been taken up, and this model of a vision centre is now used by the Australian government in the delivery of its healthcare in Southeast Asia and the Pacific Islands under our Avoidable Blindness Initiative. Why have I given you these three examples? Well, I guess what I wanted to emphasise is that we are both facing some very unique challenges in the delivery of medical care in rural areas. But we are not alone in doing so. Our joint history is full of examples of practical collaboration that have assisted each other in the care in rural and remote areas. And it's in this regard that I would like to congratulate Frontier Lifeline and the Dr. K.M. Cherian Heart Foundation for its ongoing commitment to excellence in healthcare. And I would like to congratulate all of you here today for your vision and your patience and persistence in making a difference in the health of India. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I request Dr. Sanjay Cherian to present a small memento to His Excellency David Holly. Thank you, sir. Here we have on display the employees of Frontier Lifeline who have successfully completed the 5 years. Tamar Selvi, R, staff nurse; Anthony Casper, driver; Gopinath D, physiotherapist; Murthy K, pharmacist; Renuga Devi D, nursing care assistant; Kannan J, pharmacist; Sinu George, staff nurse; Greta Samuel, ward secretary; Shrikant M, executive; Prakash R, physiotherapist; Lata Eli Raja, telecommunication executive; Balaji, lift operator; Anbu Selvi, pharmacist; Kannan, pharmacist; Sendal Kumar, pharmacist; Agnes Janitha Malla, dietitian; Sarvanan, maintenance. Congratulations, dear winners. You have certificates and memento. You can collect it from the Chairman office at Frontier Lifeline. Now we have on display the nominees for the Best Employee Award. Vidya Sudhir, Executive Billing. Shivakumar M, Chairman Office. Rajalakshmi K, Finance and Accounts. Satish G.K, Food and Nutrition Service. Srikanth, Executive, Front Office. Shadik Basha, Maintenance. Solomon Paul Raj, Maintenance. Kumar, CSSD. Sumati, Nursing PICU. Revati M, Pathology. Now, two of them has been awarded as the Best Employee by the jury. Here we have Satish G.K, Food and Nutrition Service. Please come up to the stage. I kindly request His Excellency David Holly to give her the Best Employee Award. Sumati S, Staff Nurse, PICU. Please come up to the stage. I also request David Holly to give away the certificate. Congratulations, dear winners. Let us light the lamp of knowledge. Let the radiance and brilliance of the light wipe away the ignorance in the minds of one and all. I kindly request our chief guest to light the lamp, followed by the other dignitaries. I kindly request Professor J.S.N. Murthy and the other dignitaries to light the lamp. Thank you, sir. Our chief guest for today, Professor J.S.N. Murthy, a renowned cardiologist with an expertise in cardiac catheterization for rheumatic heart disease, pacemaker implantation, aortogram for peripheral vascular disease, and renal transplantation. Dr. Murthy, who teaches DM, DNB cardiology at the university, is a recipient of several awards, including the Dr. K.S. Sanjeevi Award 2010. I now call upon Professor J.S.N. Murthy to say a few words.
Respected Chairman, Managing Director of Frontier Lifeline Hospital, a mentor and teacher for many of us, Padma Shri Dr. K.M. Cherian, His Excellency David Holly, the Consul General of Government of Australia, Professor Srinivasan, Dean Mahi, Mangalore, Sri Muniratnam, Chairman of RMK Group of Colleges, senior members of the faculties, my revered teachers, Dr. Murthy Shankaran, cardiac surgeon of the Railway Hospital, Dr. Raghavan Subramaniam, Chief of Cardiology of Madras Frontier Lifeline. They were all mentors and teachers for all of us. And we had grown in the bastions of Perambur compound. And I was surprised when Dr. KMC called me up to come for a function at the Frontier Lifeline. I was just thinking that it was a small function where I'll be in the rows in front like the others. But I was for a shock when I got the invitation in which I was mentioned to be on the dais. Sir, I'm overwhelmed by you because of you and people like you. We grew and we are in cardiology. It's because of people like you. The think what you all may know Dr. K.M. Cherian, maybe in the last decade or decade and a half, the difference between you and me is that I knew him much earlier. We were trained, tutored, ironed, disciplined, and brought into a shape in the 70s. And that credit for us, what we are here today, goes to the great doyen called K.M. Cherian. And people tell, the Australian High Commissioner was asking why he is here. I know the cause why Dr. KMC has called him. He has got a very, very soft corner for Australia and New Zealand because many of the cardiac surgeons of the older generations were trained in Australia and Green Lane Hospital, New Zealand. The cardiac surgeons, cardiac anesthesiologists, or cardiac physicians. So that's the reason, sir, all of them have got a very soft corner for Australia. And many of those people who picked up the technology from Australia and with the leadership of people like Dr. K.M. Cherian was translated into action and brought it back to this country. In those days, cardiac surgery, cardiology, and cardiac anesthesia were all under one roof called Cardiology Department of Railway Hospital under late Dr. T.J. Cherian. We were all in the 12th men of the Department of Cardiology, and those days the technologies were different and everything was different. But the hospital starts functioning from morning 7:30 and it goes on till 6 o'clock. And I was an MBBS house surgeon. You can imagine what is my status. Those days as MBBS students, we used to learn anatomy and physiology from Dr. Shankaran, who is sitting here, who is very quiet and nice now, but we know how he was with us. And then as an MBBS house surgeon, we are learning, and our job is to line up the patients, examine the patients, see them in the outpatient, and put up to the consultants. And one of the earliest consultants with whom I have associated with is Dr. Raghavan Subramaniam, who is Chief of Cardiology of this place. Very many people might know him because you are seeing him after so many years, but he's one of the brilliant person who taught us the art of seeing patients and the patience to teach juniors, because you must know that we were MBBS house surgeon and is a qualified DM cardiologist from no less than All India Institute of Medical Sciences, which is a mecca of imagination for anybody. So from there our life started, and we have passed through many phases of life. I know that all of you know KMC's greatest achievements because he's a man with dedication, man with vision, above all, a man with 24 hours of energy to work. He's a man who has created institutions, built up institutions, created 3 generations of cardiologists, cardiac surgeons, and those people have migrated and percolated to all over the country and outside this country who are delivering the goods. I know that you all might be knowing that KMC has done large number of coronary bypass surgeries, pediatric surgeries and all, but the first one was in 1976 at the railway hospital on one patient by name Muhammad Hashim. This patient came back after 16, 17 years, perfectly doing well, and has done a redo surgery in 92. So you can imagine the first bypass surgery of this country was done by Dr. K.M. Cherian. I know that all of you will be knowing the statistics about Dr. KMC much more than me, but we were the witness to the history of his creation. Those days, the cardiac cath lab is not so sophisticated as Narayan Swami sees or Jaiswal sees here. Those are all very primitive GE machines, and nobody knows what's happening. Only one mirror will be there, and what is the contents of the mirror, only one person will know, and that is late Dr. L.R. Parthasarathi, who created the cath lab, who is a radiologist by profession, but started the cath lab not only in the railway hospital, but many more centers, and trained and teach many people, and we are all the fortunate ones to be with him. Those days again, as you're saying today, electrophysiology is such an easy job, and many people say, oh, it's so simple and doing. But those days doing a pacemaker is not the domain of the cardiologist because it involves opening pocket and creating a subclavian dissection and then put the pacemaker lead. And those days, the cardiac pacemaker involves not less than 12 to 15 people, including an electrical engineer called Ranganathan who worked with Dr. KMC later on here. And then we used to have the coronary angiogram started in the 1980s. Very few people and very few centers in this country were doing it, and only person who had successful large volume of results are Dr. K.M. Cherian. And doing coronary angiogram itself was involved with associated with high mortality sometimes. And we had problems a couple of times, and he told me one day when a patient had problem, do you know that the existence of intra-aortic balloon pump? I don't know many people know even today, but those days, 1983-84, he tells his word, an intra-aortic balloon pump was brought into the railway hospital as early as that, and the man who created that and brought the technology into the railway hospital. And then pediatric surgery is a domain which has not been touched by anybody in India because of financial reasons or technical reasons, and nobody had the courage to do pediatric cardiac surgery. But this man started doing the pediatric surgery at the railway hospital and created the icon of pediatric cardiac surgery in India. And then those days, we used to use high jargon words which we never understood what it was. Profound hypothermia, core cooling, surface, all sorts of things they used to bring. Whatever technology you think of those days, they were translated into reality and brought into the Perambur Railway Hospital. He not only grew, but he allowed the next generation to grow, get the technology and translate it into reality in this country. Those days, he's maybe a curt surgeon, but he was also a great clinician, and we know how much he taught us. He is very short-tempered, you might be knowing, but turn the clock backward 35 years ago, what would have been our fate? And he was very, very dynamic, and he used to teach us. And I still remember a case a boy by name Vinith. My diagnosis was the ASD, Eisenmenger. He called me and said, you think I'm here to operate an Eisenmenger? That was a total anomalous pulmonary vena stenosis, about which he taught us as early as 1981, which we never knew. Not only that, every cardiology conference, every cardiac surgery call, those days we used to have a combined cardiologist and cardiac surgeons conference, and Perambur will always have 12 to 15 papers, and all of us were privileged to be a part of it because we learned what to write, how to write, and how to publish, because these doyens have created benchmarks and standards for us to emulate.